Imagine being on top of the world, only to have it all taken away instantly. One moment, you're smashing home runs, making history, and living your dream. The next, you're sidelined, forever. Some of the most promising baseball stars saw their careers crumble, not because of lack of talent, but because of injuries that changed everything. From million-dollar contracts to unfortunate retirements, these stories will shock you. What went wrong? And could anything have saved their careers? Stay tuned as we discover the tragic falls of baseball's brightest stars. Sandy Koufax was unstoppable. He wasn't just a great pitcher, but a force of nature. With a fastball that seemed to rise as it reached the plate, and a curveball that made batters look helpless, he dominated Major League Baseball like no one before him. From 1961 to 1966, he was untouchable. 4 no-hitters, 3 Cy Young Awards, and in 1965, he set a single-season record with 382 strikeouts. He was at the top of the game, but no one saw the pain he carried with him every time he took the mound. Koufax's left elbow was falling apart. The pain was unbearable. By 1966, doctors told him he should stop pitching immediately. But Koufax wasn't just any player. He ignored the advice and pushed through, delivering his most outstanding season yet, 27 wins, a 1.73 ERA, another Cy Young Award. But the truth was, he was playing through extreme pain. He knew it couldn't last forever. At just 30 years old, Sandy Koufax shocked the world by walking away from baseball. He was at the peak of his career, but his body had reached its limit. Even though he retired young, his legacy was untouchable. He was elected to the Hall of Fame just 6 years later, becoming the youngest player ever inducted. But imagine what he could have done if his body hadn't betrayed him. Kirk Gibson's story is different, but just as heartbreaking. Unlike Koufax, Gibson wasn't known for dominance over time. He was known for moments that defined his career and will never be forgotten. And yet, injuries stopped him from becoming what he could have been. His most legendary moment came in the 1988 World Series. He wasn't even supposed to play. He had injured both legs during the playoffs, and everyone assumed he was out. But when the Dodgers needed him most, in Game 1, trailing in the 9th inning, Gibson limped to the plate. His legs were shot, but his upper body was still strong. On a full count, he swung with everything he had and sent the ball flying over the right field fence. He could barely jog around the bases, pumping his fist in victory. It was one of the greatest moments in baseball history. But for Gibson, it was also a sign of things to come. Injuries followed him everywhere. His aggressive playing style, his speed and power made him a constant threat on the field, but also made him vulnerable. He played baseball like a football player, running full speed, diving, crashing into walls. And his body paid the price. Michael Cuddyer wasn't the kind of player who stole the headlines every night, but he was the kind of player every team wanted. A leader in the clubhouse, a reliable bat, and a guy who could play almost anywhere on the field. He was the definition of a team player. He made 2 All-Star appearances over 15 seasons in the majors, won a batting title, and played a crucial role in multiple postseason runs. But by the time he reached the end of his career, his body had taken a beating, and the game he loved had become too painful to play. Cuddyer was drafted by the Minnesota Twins in 1997, and for over a decade, he was one of their most consistent hitters. He wasn't a flashy superstar, but he was dependable. Whether he was in the outfield at first base or even filling in at second or third, he gave everything he had. His work ethic made him a fan favorite and a leader in the dugout. But it also took a toll on him. By the time he left Minnesota and signed with the Rockies, the injuries were starting to pile up. In 2014, he played only 40 games due to an abdominal injury that required surgery. Even though he bounced back in 2015 to play 117 games for the Mets, his knee issues slowed him down. He was no longer the player he used to be. Every movement hurt, every swing felt like a battle, and every game left him aching. Cuddyer could have stayed in the league a little longer. He still had time left on his contract, but he didn't want to be someone who just took up a roster spot. He wanted to be a contributing player, not a liability. So, at 36 years old, he decided to leave the game. He had played through pain for years, but he knew it was time to stop. From the very start of his career, injuries haunted Mantle. It all started in the 1951 World Series, his first significant season. He was playing right field, chasing down a fly ball when his cleat got caught in a drainage cover. His knee buckled and he collapsed to the ground. Some thought he had been shot because of how suddenly he went down. That injury was just the beginning of a career-long battle with pain. Mantle was never the same after that. He had surgery on the knee, but it never fully healed. He played through the pain, relying on his natural talent to keep him at the top of the game. But every season, the injuries kept adding up. Rick Ankiel's story is unlike any other in baseball. He was supposed to be the next big thing, a left-handed pitcher with a fastball that could overpower anyone. By the time he was 20 years old, he was already drawing comparisons to legends like Randy Johnson and Sandy Koufax. Broadcasters and scouts believed they were witnessing history in the making. But just as quickly as his rise began, it all fell apart. It wasn't an injury that took Ankiel down. It was something much stranger. During the 2000 playoffs, something inside him just snapped. He suddenly lost all control over his pitches. Balls sailed over the batters' heads, bounced in the dirt, and went anywhere but the strike zone. No one could explain it. Some called it the yips, a mental block that ruins a pitcher's ability to throw accurately. Others thought it was the pressure of the moment. Whatever it was, it crushed his career as a pitcher. Ankiel tried everything to regain his control, but nothing worked. He spent years in the minors, struggling to fix what had gone wrong. But the more he tried, the worse it got. By 2005, he made a drastic decision. He was done pitching. Instead of walking away from baseball, though, he reinvented himself. He became an outfielder, a move that is almost unheard of at the major league level. While Ankiel's struggles were mostly mental, Bo Jackson's downfall was purely physical. Jackson wasn't just an elite baseball player, but a rare athlete who dominated two sports. He was an all-star in both Major League Baseball and the NFL, something no one else had ever done. His power, speed, and agility made him one of the most electrifying players to ever step on a field. But his legendary career suddenly stopped in an NFL playoff game in 1991. One tackle changed everything. As he was being brought down, his leg got caught and his hip dislocated. At first, the injury didn't seem like a career ender, but Jackson soon learned that he had suffered something much worse than just a dislocation. His hip had lost its blood supply, leading to a condition called avascular necrosis. Over time, the bone itself started to die. Jackson's football career was over immediately. His baseball career lasted a little longer, but he was never the same. In 1992, he had hip replacement surgery, and though he tried to keep playing, the explosiveness that once made him great was gone. By 1994, he had to retire from baseball, ending one of the greatest what-if stories in sports history.